My name was Mohammad. I was a respected Muslim judge, a guardian of the laws steeped deeply in tradition and piety. My life was an unyielding fortress of faith, marked by daily prayers and rituals that wove the fabric of my existence. Yet, beneath the surface, a torrent of spiritual turmoil brewed. As age 38 loomed, I felt an emptiness I could scarcely acknowledge, a dissonance between the path I walked and the silent cries of my soul. I remember vividly a night when doubt clawed at my heart, a dream, haunting and vivid, where shadows danced and questions echoed. What if the very beliefs I held were not the foundation of truth, but chains binding me? I was terrified, caught in a relentless grip of fear and confusion. I would never dare speak these thoughts to anyone. To do so would mean risking everything. Then came the day my life took a harrowing turn. An accident, sudden and catastrophic, ripped me from the world I knew, plunging me into darkness. In that void, I encountered him. Jesus. Standing in a luminous realm, he called my name, piercing through the veil of ignorance I had worn for so long. In that moment, I was laid bare. He revealed the hidden truths, an unseen battle for our souls, waged by forces that thrive on deception and fear. Returning to life was not liberation. It was a descent into isolation. I was branded a heretic by my family, scorned by peers who once revered me. My heart ached with a loneliness that felt insurmountable. Yet the truth I had seen compelled me to seek out the light, even in darkness. I turned to the sacred texts of a faith I had not known, finding solace in the mysteries of grace and acceptance. In the shadows, I began my secret journey. I sought out fellow seekers, those who had crossed the threshold into the truth of Jesus. Together we formed our own fellowship, a sanctuary where fear could not stifle our shared revelations. I realized my transformation was not random. It bore the mark of divine purpose. I had a message to share, the urgent call to awaken others still shrouded in darkness. So, let's journey together through this story of awakening, of breaking free from the confines of tradition, and embracing a truth that defies all odds. Before we commence, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? And what time is it in your corner of the world? I want to feel the pulse of this truth reaching far and wide. And if you love Jesus and seek more revelations, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. What I'm about to share transcends mere testimony. It is a call to awakening, a promise of liberation from the shadows. The next chapter begins now. In the heart of a major Middle Eastern city, steeped in rich traditions and conservative values, life moved to a rhythm dictated by the weight of faith. I was an imam, deeply embedded within this community, respected for my adherence to the religious teachings that shaped our lives. Each day began and ended with rituals, prayers, fasting, and teachings, designed to reinforce our faith. Yet beneath the veneer of devotion, I could feel an undercurrent of fear present, a fear of questioning the very beliefs that had been instilled in us since childhood. It was an environment where divergent thoughts were not only discouraged, but also dangerous. As I led the Friday prayers, I often felt the strain of keeping my own doubts hidden. The walls of the mosque stood witness to my struggle, amplifying my thoughts as they swirled in my mind. I was to fulfill my role as a spiritual guide, yet I felt increasingly trapped within the confines of my own convictions. It was in the midst of this turbulent spiritual struggle that a catastrophic event changed everything. One fateful day, during a particularly intense sermon, I collapsed. The world around me faded into darkness, and I slipped into a coma, entering a realm that transcended the boundaries of my previous understanding. In that suspended state, I found myself stranded in a harsh desert, surrounded by an oppressive darkness. It was disorienting and frightening, and initially, I felt utterly alone. Then, from the void, a radiant light emerged, and I was drawn toward it. That was when I encountered Jesus. His presence enveloped me in warmth and compassion. It felt as though every burden I carried was lifted away. Ibrahim. He called my name, and in that singular moment I realized the weight of my inner turmoil was known and understood. It was here, in this sacred encounter, that the layers of deception began to peel away. Jesus spoke profoundly about the hidden agendas that had long manipulated our understanding of faith and spirituality. He revealed how the elite used fear and division to maintain control over the masses, entrenching the very systems we revered. He showed me visions of the world, illustrating the impact of these machinations. Wars, suffering, strife, all engineered to foster division among people who should be united in love and compassion. The truth washed over me like a flood, stirring a sense of urgency in my spirit. This spiritual war was not merely a personal struggle. It was a collective battle against the forces that sought to keep us shackled in deception. With each revelation, my resolve strengthened. I understood my role was no longer confined to the walls of the mosque. I was called to awaken others in my community. Jesus impressed upon me the importance of sharing these truths, of exposing the lies that had infiltrated our beliefs. The messages, urgent and compelling, encouraged me to confront my fears, knowing that embracing this truth would inevitably lead to pushback from those still aligned with the established order. As I began to awaken from the coma, the knowledge of this divine mission propelled me forward, igniting a fire within that refused to be extinguished. Returning to reality after this profound experience felt surreal, as if I had stepped through a veil separating two worlds. I was back in my body, in my familiar surroundings, yet forever changed. The spiritual war I had witnessed continued outside, and I felt it tugging at my heart, urging me to rise and act. Armed with the revelations from my encounter with Jesus, I stepped back into my life with newfound purpose, ready to face whatever consequences may come. The journey ahead would demand courage, but I was resolute, committed to sharing the truth I had been entrusted with, determined to shine a light in the darkness that enveloped our society. I'm Mohammad, a 38-year-old judge in a conservative part of my city where the weight of tradition hangs heavy in the air. I've dedicated my life to the pursuit of justice, my exterior reflecting the austere values of my faith. As I walk into the courtroom, the respect of my peers and community surrounds me like a blanket. Yet beneath that facade lies an unsettling emptiness, a growing void that gnaws at my spirit. Despite my devout practices, I grapple with a disconnect from God. Sense that my prayers have echoed off the walls rather than reaching the divine. I find myself caught between unwavering devotion and a profound longing for something more, something that I can't quite grasp. There are moments during my days when the monotony of it all becomes suffocating. I recite verses, I make judgments, each action a part of the expected routine, yet my heart feels increasingly detached. I've witnessed human suffering firsthand, making decisions that impact lives, but in the midst of all the responsibility, I feel like a spectator rather than an active participant in my faith. The rituals that once inspired me have turned into a series of motions that leave me feeling empty. I yearn for an encounter that could bridge the widening chasm I sense in my spiritual life, a connection that transcends the ordinary and penetrates to the core of my existence. Then, unexpectedly, an incident occurred that would change everything. One fateful morning, while preparing for a particularly tense court session, I suddenly felt lightheaded. My vision blurred, and before I knew it, I had collapsed. When consciousness faded, I slipped into a realm that felt completely foreign, a vast expanse of night and silence where I found myself alone in a desolate landscape. But in that darkness, a figure appeared, radiant and full of love. It was Jesus. His presence enveloped me in warmth, a stark contrast to the feelings of isolation I had carried within me for so long. Who you are is not defined by the titles you hold, nor the judgments you make, he said. In that moment, clarity washed over me like a cleansing wave. Jesus shared profound revelations about the world I inhabited, the hidden agendas that manipulated society, the elite who thrived on fear and division, and the spiritual war that raged just beneath the surface. He revealed how many are kept in chains of deception, believing the lies propagated by those in power. I saw glimpses of wars and unrest, manifestations of the conflict driven by misunderstanding. Each revelation pierced my heart, urging me to recognize the truth that lies beyond mere tradition. When I returned to consciousness, everything felt different. The sterile walls of my hospital room contrasted sharply with the vivid landscapes I had just witnessed. I was filled with a newfound urgency, a determination to embrace the truth that Jesus had given me, understanding that my role as a judge could be more than merely enforcing the law. I felt compelled to actively engage in a mission of awakening, not just for myself, but for my community, those caught in the cycles of deception like I once was. The struggle would be daunting, but armed with the revelations of love and truth, I knew I had to step forward and let my voice be heard. I've dedicated my life as a judge, a respected figure in my community, rooted deeply in my faith. But lately, something has been off. During my prayers, a persistent discomfort lingers in my heart, a gnawing sense of doubt that I can't shake. I recite the verses as I've always done, but they feel like mere words now, hollow echoes that don't resonate with the belief I once held so firmly. The atmosphere in the mosque, filled with devotion, now feels stifling, making me question the very purpose of my faith. Is this all there is? Have I been merely going through the motions, lost in a loop of tradition, devoid of real connection? When I close my eyes at night, the disturbing dreams come, plunging me into dark landscapes filled with conflict and despair. In these dreams, I walk through chaotic scenes of war and suffering, where the realities of our world are laid bare. I see people consumed by hatred, divided by misleading narratives, and overwhelmed by fear. These nightmares awaken a crisis within me, igniting a fiery conflict that I feel unable to express to anyone. I ache to share my fears, but the pressure of expectations weighs heavily on my shoulders. What would my community think? What would my family say? The fear of rejection is palpable, and it keeps me locked in silence, trapped in a cycle of tormenting thoughts. Then, one night, everything changed. The dream was different this time. Instead of chaos, I stood in a vast expanse of light. I felt a warmth wrapping around me, and from that light, Jesus appeared. His presence was illuminating, comforting, as if I were finally home. Ibrahim, he said, a name that felt both foreign and familiar. In that moment, clarity pierced through the fog of confusion clouding my mind. He spoke of the spiritual war that raged not just within my heart, but across the world, revealing the hidden agendas that manipulated entire societies, forging divisions among us. I could see how often we're kept in darkness by the elite, who feed off our fears, perpetuating a cycle of deception that has isolated us from the truth. In this divine encounter, Jesus opened my eyes to the urgent need for awakening. He showed me how many people, like myself, were trapped in their own doubt and fear, unaware of the manipulation that surrounded us. The images of suffering I had witnessed in my dreams became lessons in love and compassion, urging me not to turn away, but to confront the truth boldly. How long could I remain silent while the world around me teetered on the edge of despair? I realized that faith was not merely about tradition and ritual. It was about love, connection, and the courage to challenge the status quo. When I awoke from that transformative experience, my heart raced with urgency. I could no longer ignore the calling that had been placed upon me. The realization hit me with overwhelming force. I was chosen to share what I had seen, to help lead others toward their own awakening. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was determined to embrace this purpose. I felt the weight of responsibility to break the chains of deception that bound my community, armed with the truth I had encountered. This spiritual war was my fight, and I was ready to step into the light, no matter the cost. The day began like any other, the sun rising on a typical morning in my life as a judge. I was Mohammad, a figure of authority in my community, deeply affected by the weight of my responsibilities. I'd long adhered to my faith's rituals, often feeling them as chains instead of a source of spiritual upliftment. As I navigated through my day, a creeping sense of unease settled within me, and an unsettling feeling that something was amiss. I brushed it aside, focusing instead on the trials ahead and the judgments to be rendered. But the anxiety felt pervasive, like an undercurrent stirring beneath my carefully structured life. Then came the moment that forever altered my existence. Driving to the courthouse, my mind buzzed with thoughts of my cases and the pressing demands of the day. Suddenly, chaos erupted. A car swerved into my lane, and before I could react, there was a deafening crash, followed by the disorienting sensation of time standing still. The world dissolved into darkness. I remembered waking up in an unnerving silence, an absence of sound and light. I was no longer in my body. I felt unshackled but utterly adrift. In that shadowy expanse, fear gripped me, engendered by a realization that I had crossed over into a realm beyond my understanding. As I floated in that emptiness, I was enveloped in a dazzling light that seemed to pierce through the darkness. I felt both terrified and inexplicably drawn to the source of this radiant glow. And then, amidst the overwhelming brightness, I heard him call my name. Jesus. His voice was both comforting and authoritative, reverberating through my very being. In that moment, an unshakable understanding cascaded through me. Jesus stood before me, embodying an essence of love that I had never known, his presence exuding peace in contrast to the turmoil that had plagued my heart. During our encounter, he unveiled truths hidden from me until now. Jesus revealed the depths of the spiritual war that raged not only within me but across the world. He spoke of how the elite wield power by manipulating our beliefs and fostering division among us, creating a cycle of deception perpetuated by those who benefit from our ignorance. I saw visions of people entrapped in fear and misunderstanding, their hearts clouded by societal constructs that distorted their connection to the true essence of spirituality. Each revelation shook me, unveiling not just the falsehoods I had accepted, but also the implications for humanity. I felt exposed, my blinders ripped away. In that moment of divine clarity, I understood the magnitude of my awakening, the need to confront this deception, to rise against the manipulations that had long governed our lives, was now more than personal. It transformed into a mission. Jesus urged me to embrace this truth and share my revelations with others, to awaken them from their slumber, even while knowing the risks I might face in doing so. The thought of returning to my life as a judge, of facing the scrutiny of my community and family, overwhelmed me. Yet, I couldn't ignore the urgency of his call. I felt a newfound strength surging within me, compelling me to take my place in this spiritual battle, ready to shine a light on the shadows that had kept so many in chains. When I returned to life, everything felt different. The bright lights of the hospital room couldn't drown out the darkness that filled my heart. I was alive, yet something was terribly wrong. I had spent what felt like eternity in the presence of Jesus, awakened to truths that reshaped my understanding of the world. But the homecoming I anticipated became a nightmare. I quickly discovered that in the eyes of my family and community, I was now a heretic, a label that shamed and isolated me. The very people who had once embraced me as a leader now turned their backs, their expressions twisting from love to judgment as I unveiled the awakening I had undergone. The weight of their rejection crushed me. I had always been steadfast in my role as a judge, a respected figure in the community. But now, I felt like a ghost haunting the halls of my own life. The unease of not being accepted began to seep into every part of my existence. I saw the whispers behind closed doors, the furtive glances from friends turning into something sinister and unwelcoming. The warmth of community that had once enveloped me now felt like a distant memory, replaced by a chilling loneliness that wrapped around me like a heavy cloak. It was a loneliness that echoed the spiritual war I had witnessed in that other realm, the battle for my soul that seemed to extend into this reality. I often replayed the moments with Jesus, where he illuminated the hidden agendas of the elite and the deception that governed our lives. Each revelation flickered in my mind, urging me to stand firm in my newfound truths, despite the onslaught of rejection. Yet the fear hung heavy as I walked through my community, knowing that my faith had shifted beyond the familiar boundaries. How could I share the reality of love and connection I'd seen in the light when the world around me clung so tightly to the darkness of tradition and misunderstanding? My heart ached, yearning for understanding, for the conversation that could link me back to those I had lost. In conversations with the few who remained open to me, I sought to articulate the weight of the spiritual awakening thrust upon me. I spoke of how the elite manipulated faith for control, how we were fed narratives that divided us instead of uniting us in compassion. Despite their initial curiosity, I saw doubt creep back into their eyes, a reflection of their ingrained fears. The tension grew each time I shared my journey. It felt like stepping onto a battlefield, armed with truths that exposed the falsehoods we had collectively accepted. But each attempt felt like throwing a stone into a vast ocean of doubt, the ripples lost amidst the waves of centuries-old beliefs. The loneliness spiraled deeper, challenging my strength and resolve. At night, I often lay awake, haunted by visions of a world in conflict, images of wars fought over ideologies, people manipulated by those in power, and families torn apart by division. I could not shake the feeling that my own community risked falling into this trap. The awakening that had been granted to me felt like a ticking clock. I understood I had to keep pushing forward, to find more souls willing to listen, even as the shadows of rejection threatened to consume me. I would not be silenced. I would rise despite the pressure, driven by love and the desire to illuminate the path toward truth, no matter the cost. In the aftermath of my awakening, I found myself yearning for truth in a way I had never experienced before. I began to secretly explore the Bible, drawn to its stories and teachings like a moth to a flame. Each night, when the world around me became quiet, I would retreat into a corner of my home, carefully opening the pages that once felt forbidden. I was eager to uncover the revelations that Jesus had shared with me during that critical moment in my life. The scriptures danced before me, words that resonated deeply and offered solace amid the turbulence that churned inside me. In those quiet hours, I was no longer just Mohammad, the respected judge. I was a seeker, desperate to find meaning beyond what I had always known. My exploration didn't stop with solitary reading. I found videos and testimonies from other converts, individuals who had bravely shared their journeys away from the shadows of doubt into the light of faith. These stories echoed my own struggles, illuminating the path I was now attempting to navigate. Hearing their experiences brought a sense of validation I desperately craved, reminding me that I was not alone in this quest for deeper understanding. Each testimony was a thread connecting me to a larger tapestry of awakening, a reminder that the lies propagated by the elite were being unraveled through the courage of believers willing to confront the truth. Feeling inspired by these newfound connections, I sought out a small community of believers who had also experienced similar awakenings. Meeting with them felt like discovering a family I never knew existed. Together, we engaged in soulful discussions, sharing our doubts, fears, and revelations. Each encounter was filled with warmth and understanding, a safe haven amidst the larger world that seemed so hostile to our beliefs. In this nurturing environment, I experienced a sense of peace I had not known in years. It was as if the weight of abandonment was lifted, if only for a moment, as we united in our common goal to seek truth and love. Yet, the shadow of loss continued to loom over me. Each smile and word shared in our gatherings was tinged with the knowledge that my transformation could lead to rejection from my family and the very community that had once embraced me. I prayed earnestly to Jesus for guidance, seeking strength to confront the reality of my choices. My heart tugged at the thought of disconnection from loved ones I had always cherished. Still, deep within me, another voice emerged, the voice of urgency, compelling me to stand firm in my faith. I could not turn back. The revelations I had received demanded I share what I had learned, no matter the cost. In those heartfelt prayers, I felt Jesus respond. His compassion washed over me, filling the spaces left vacant by fear and uncertainty. I pleaded for clarity, wrestling with the tension between my old life and the awakening I had undergone. I sensed that this spiritual war was not merely an individual battle, but a collective one. The fears that held us captive acted as a barrier, isolating us from the divine love that sought to unite us. I became resolute in my commitment to break through those barriers and share not only my journey, but the truths revealed to me during that life-altering encounter. Even as I faced an uncertain future, my heart pulsed with the conviction that love and truth could conquer even the darkest of fears. As I grappled with the revelations brought forth during my near-death experience, a profound understanding began to settle deep within my soul. I had been transformed for a greater purpose. This wasn't just a personal awakening. It felt like a calling to stand as a witness for the truth that Jesus had shown me. I realized that remaining silent was no longer an option. The spiritual war I had witnessed, the manipulation of beliefs wielded by the elite, demanded my voice. I could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on my shoulders, igniting a fire within me that wouldn't be extinguished. With each passing day, the urgency of this mission intensified. I had seen glimpses of a world manipulated by hidden agendas, where fear and division were tools used by those in power to maintain control. These deceptions extended far beyond my personal experience. They permeated the very fabric of society, affecting the lives of countless souls. I began to understand that my role was not just to share my experience, but to expose the lies that held so many in chains, preventing them from experiencing the love and truth waiting just beyond their reach. But as I prepared to share my revelations, I couldn't shake the fear of the repercussions that lay ahead. I knew all too well the potential risks that came with speaking the truth. My community had already labeled me a heretic, and I worried about how loved ones might react. Would they turn their backs on me completely? The fear of rejection was a powerful adversary, competing with the inner certainty that I had to move forward. I spent nights in prayer, seeking strength from Jesus, craving the courage to face whatever challenges awaited me. Each prayer brought clarity, though the anxiety lingered. I felt Jesus urging me to embrace this truth, to trust in the path he had illuminated for me. I recalled the stories of those who had gone before me, figures who had defied the odds and stood against the tide for their beliefs. Their courage inspired me, and I realized that my fear was a part of the spiritual war within me, attempting to hold me back from my purpose. I reminded myself that every step I took toward the truth could also inspire others to awaken. Emboldened by this newfound resolve, I reached out to individuals who might understand my journey. I sought connections with those who had similarly wrestled with their faith and navigated the treacherous waters between traditional beliefs and the awakening truths revealed to them. In these small gatherings, we shared stories of struggles and victories, our fears and hopes intertwining like a tapestry of faith. I began to see how our collective awakening could shine a light on the hidden agendas that sought to stifle us. The spiritual war was not just mine. It was a battle we could face together, each voice added to the chorus echoing against the darkness of deception. After much deep reflection, I reached a crossroads, a point where I knew I had to make a decision that would redefine my identity and purpose. The spiritual war I felt raging within me demanded not just acknowledgement, but action. The truths revealed to me in the aftermath of my near-death experience with Jesus were too profound to ignore. I realized that I could no longer cling to my previous life, and that my Muslim identity, while a part of my upbringing, could not encompass the fullness of my awakening. The call to liberate myself from the chains of doubt and deception became a clarion call in my heart. Leaving behind my home felt like tearing a piece of my soul out, yet the pull toward truth and freedom was undeniable. I packed a few belongings, each item a token of my past life, and stepped out into the world with a heart full of hope and fear. The familiar streets of my city faded behind me, replaced by the uncertainty of what lay ahead. I was aware of the challenges that awaited me. The choices I made would likely alienate me from family and close friends, inviting judgment for my decision to abandon everything I had known. But the feeling of liberation coursing through my veins was more powerful than the fear of rejection. As I ventured into my new life, I resolved to share the message that had been entrusted to me. I sought out like-minded individuals who had also felt the stirring in their souls, those who had embarked on their journeys of awakening. In coffee shops and community centers, we gathered to exchange experiences, to support one another in this spiritual war. Each story shared felt like a thread weaving us closer together, strengthening our resolve to confront the hidden agendas that sought to manipulate our beliefs. This new community became my fortress against the isolation I feared, filling the void left by those I had lost. The challenges, however, were ever present. Each day brought reminders of what I had forsaken. There were moments when the weight of loneliness loomed large, and I battled the urge to retreat, to find safety in the familiarity of my past. Yet those moments were overshadowed by the urgency of the mission before me. I felt the desire to awaken others, to help them break free from the chains of deception that bound them. In conversations, I spoke of the truths I had learned from Jesus, how the elite manipulate perceptions to maintain control, how fear is wielded as a weapon to govern behavior. Each dialogue served as both a reminder and a catalyst, igniting a desire for transformation within both myself and those who listened. In these interactions, I began to witness profound shifts in others. Eyes once clouded with doubt began to shine with the light of awakening. I knew the journey would not be easy. The resistance from those who still clung to tradition would be fierce. The tension of fighting against established norms weighed heavily on my heart. But in those moments of connection, as we shared our struggles and aspirations, I felt a power that reassured me. Together, we could rise against the darkness, illuminating the path toward truth where there were only shadows before. I remained steadfast in my commitment to this calling, recognizing that the impact of our collective awakening could ripple far beyond our immediate circles. Now that you have journeyed with me through the depths of my transformation, I must ask, what shadows linger in your own heart? Have you too felt the tug of a truth that refuses to remain silent? The world is rife with deceptions, and each of us is entangled in a greater narrative, a spiritual war that transcends personal belief. We are called to wake up, to confront the lies fed to us, and to embrace the light that reveals the path forward. I know the fear
of stepping outside the confines of what is familiar, of questioning the very beliefs that have shaped our lives. Yet the light of Jesus breaks through that darkness, urging us to rise. In our rejection of the truth, we risk entrapment in systems designed to divide and control us. Every moment we hesitate is a moment lost in the battle for our souls. Your voice matters. If you resonate with this experience, or if you have felt the stirrings of an awakening, I invite you to share your story.
In the comments, let us come together. Your testimony may ignite the flame of hope in another who feels lost. If this message resonates with you, please don't leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond and hitting the notification bell. The revelations yet to come will shine even brighter, offering insights that could change everything. We are on the precipice of something bigger. Your journey towards truth is about to take a profound turn. In our next exploration, we will dive into another powerful testimony, a story of redemption and hope from someone who found their way out of despair through an extraordinary encounter with the divine. You won't want to miss it. I'm Mohammad, and I thank you for staying with me on this path towards awakening. Remember, the truth is out there, ready to be embraced by those courageous enough to seek it.